So for our first look at functions, we're going to look at them from the point stand. So we're looking at them where we have points. First thing we have to understand when we talk functions is relation. And so for a relation, it's a set of ordered pairs. All that means is you can graph it. If you can graph it, it's a relation. If you can graph it, it's a relation. When I do graphs, I have x and y values that make up my points. The x portion of the point is going to be where I get my domain. The y, that's where I'm going to get my range. So the x part is the domain, the y part is the range. And the way that we determine if something is a function is listed on here for us. Basically, for every x, and think of x as like what you have and y as the answer. So, or what you've been given for the x. So every time I give you an x, you have to be able to give me just one answer for that y. If when I tell you x, you can give me one answer for the y, what we have is a function. If you can't give me if you can't give me one y to match that x, then what we have is not a function. So we're going to take a look at these two examples. So on this example, they're saying that we need to give them the domain, the range, and determine if that relation is a function. Again, they're using the term relation because it's something I can graph. So what they're giving me, first they're giving me this crazy little squiggly thing. That crazy little squiggly thing, that's just what we use to say that stuff goes together. That's how we indicate what we call a set. And remember the definition of relation said it's a set of ordered pairs. So that squiggly stuff means set, goes together. And inside that set notation, inside those little squiggly things, I have a bunch of points. So on number 1, I have 4 points. On number 2, I have 4 points. So let's look at these. I'm being asked for domain range. First thing I do, and even the function, the first thing I do is mark my x and y. I need to know who's x, I need to know who's y, and that's whether I physically write down x and y like I did here, or I mentally do it. My domain is going to be the x part. So for my domain, I'm going to use that little crazy little squiggly thing, and I'm going to write down all the x values. So there's an x value of 10, -2, -1, and 5. So I'll write those down. 10, -2, -1, and 5. Then I go to my range. For range, I'm looking for the y values. So I'm going to use my little set notation, those little squigglies, or the braces, as they're called. And I go and I grab my y values. I have a 4. I have another 4. Once I write that 4 down one time, I'm not going to have to write it twice. So I have a 4, I have a 1, and I have a 6. 4, 1, 6. Now I have to figure out if it's a function. So to figure out if it's a function, I'm going to do a little call out thing. When I call out one of these x's that I have written here for the domain, we're going to look back up at the point and figure out its matching y. As long as you can give me one matching y for each of those x values, we have a function. If you can't, we don't have a function. So when I call out 10 and we look back to the point, 10 goes with 4. So we're good on that one. -2. -2 goes with 4. We're good on that one. -1. -1 has 1. 5, 5 has 6. So for each of these x's, when I call them out, I can look at the points and I can figure out exactly which y goes with it. So on number 1, it's a function. Let's write the word function. Let's look at number 2. Let's do the same thing on number 2 and see what happens. If my stylus will work, I can write down what I need to write down. So in the first part, I'm looking for my domain. I use my little braces, and I find my x's and I write it down. I have a 5. I have a 5 again, so I don't need to write it twice. It's already included in the first one. Then I have a 6. Then I have a 6 again, so I don't need to write that twice. That's my domain. I grab my x values from my domain. For the range, I'm going to grab my y values. So I have a 6, I have a 7. And again, I don't need to repeat the values once I write them down. So there's our domain and range. Now we move on to determining if we have a function. When I call out 5, because 5 is one of those x values, when we look back to the points, you don't know whether to tell me the answer is 6 or tell me the answer is 7. Because you don't know whether to tell me the answer is 6 or 7, we don't have a function. It's not a function. Because you couldn't tell me a single answer. You gave me 2. If you give me 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not a function. You have to give me one answer. So when I call out the x value, you can only give me one answer for that y. If you do, we have a function like in number 1. If you can't, we don't have a function. Another thing to notice real quick is that on number 1, we had some y values that repeated, and that didn't matter. We still had a function. But on number 2, when we had some x values that repeated, our answer for whether or not it was a function was not a function.